Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines now with the director of Demos think tank, Polly Mackenzie, and chief political correspondent at the Daily Telegraph, Christopher Hope. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages. Gas levy gets the green light is the lead story in The Times, which says the government will announce a tax on gas bills to fund low-carbon heating, despite soaring prices. The Telegraph claims the government could scale back free lateral flow and PCR testing amid concern among senior government ministers over the cost to the public purse. Meanwhile, the Financial Times leads on a worldwide corporate tax agreement that will see a minimum rate of 15% implemented across 136 countries, raising over £100 billion a year in tax. The Daily Mail reports on plans for a new 888 emergency phone number for women in response to the murder of Sarah Everard, which could be up and running by Christmas. A former Tesco boss has been called in by Boris Johnson to save Christmas amongst supply shortages. That is on the front of the Express. The front of The Guardian looks at the impact of TikTok anti-vax social media posts on children. And it is crunch time, according to The Star, which reports the price of crisps and snacks could rocket. And we're joined tonight by Polly Mackenzie and Christopher Hope. Good evening to both of you. So we're going to turn first of all to the front of the Mail, Polly, which has news of a new phone number for women walking home at night, the Walk Me Home service.
Yeah, this is a proposal that BT put to government as a result of the Sarah Everard case. So much concern about making women more safe in the street, but also giving more women the confidence that they can call on the authorities, that they are being protected. The proposal here is, in a way, replicating what millions of women do informally with their friends. I've often walked home and stayed on the line to, a friend, a family member, just so that that somebody will know if anything bad has happened. And I'm sure lots of people will say, text me when you get home, so that there is that sense of reassurance. This will be a more formal system, either through a phone app where you could basically allow it to share your location. Presumably, you'd have to tell it where you were going so that it knew if you had gone off track. Exactly how that would work is kind of still to be ironed out. Or possibly a phone number. This 888 is a suggested number. It's not a phone number that you can just immediately call. This is a proposal that's being worked out. But what the Mail is reporting is that Priti Patel has backed this BT idea.
Yeah, and Christopher, she has apparently described it as exactly the kind of innovative scheme which would be good to get going as soon as we can. She's looking into it. I mean, it sounds positive in the short term, doesn't it? It's something to give women more confidence. But yet again, this is a solution that puts the onus on women.
That's right. The issue for Priti Patel is, how can you restore faith in the police service, and why isn't there a full inquiry into the Metropolitan Police after this murder of Sarah Everard by the policeman? It's unbelievable, really. It's a good idea from Philip Jansen. He's the CEO of BT. It may cost as little as £50 million, but as you say, it does. It's kind of formalising what Polly says so eloquently.
Oh, and just as we were talking about speaking eloquently, Christopher, we've got you back. We lost you mid-flow there.
Apologies, I just saying how well Polly was talking about it there. That you would text an estimate of when you might get home to the 888 number, or download a mobile app, and that's a way of tracking you and getting you home. I mean, it's a way of doing it, but it doesn't quite get to the point of the lack of faith in the police service is not addressed by this at all.
It comes, Polly, on the day we've had Dame Louise Casey, Baroness Louise Casey, appointed to look into culture at the Metropolitan Police.
Yeah, so, Louise Casey is a formidable woman. First came to kind of the public eye when she, for Tony Blair, ran an initiative to massively reduce street homelessness. Incredibly successful. Went on to be an antisocial behaviour czar. Then to do a project looking at how you help the most troubled families to deal with their problems and get back on track. So she is the sort of investigating pioneer who comes in and sorts things out. She's a great name. Good choice, I think. The problem is that because it's an informal inquiry, she won't necessarily have any powers in order to guarantee that she gets hold of the papers. Will be reliant on the Metropolitan Police to comply. You would think, given that they've appointed her, they would comply. But we have seen from past examples of inquiries into the Met's behaviour that actually getting that culture of disclosure is really, really difficult. And often they have dragged their heels on publishing, on sharing documents. I think the most important thing is for the Met to open their books up as much as possible to Louise Casey, who is an absolutely kind of trustworthy figure in that way, and be ready and willing to accept that they may need to change. And that is something that the Met, I think, has struggled with a lot in the past. If they want public confidence back, they have to accept that something needs to change.
Yeah, it comes down to trust, doesn't it, Christopher? This story is in the Times, an inquiry into claims of sexual abuse by its officers, looking into allegations made against officers and the vetting process, which has been much discussed in recent weeks.
Yeah, as Polly says, Louise Casey she takes no prisoners. I mean, she'll call out any obfuscation. It's a kind of line of duty style inquiry by someone who's not a policeman, and I wonder whether there may be ways of I wonder how open the Met Police will be with this inquiry. Obviously, it's got the maximum support of Cressida Dick. She's there for 2 more years, so there is a real reason why this has to do a good job. I just hope that Louise Casey can get to the bottom of what she needs to find out, and it can look into these claims of issues within the Met Police. I think it has to be resolved as soon as possible, and it's very important that they do show what they're doing here, and nothing is hidden.
Yeah, and when we talk about faith in the Metropolitan Police, also in its commissioner, Dame Cressida Dick, and as Christopher's saying there, she has a further 2 years to serve. Polly.
You know, lots of people called for Cressida Dick to go. They called for Cressida Dick to go after the relatively aggressive, violent suppression of the protests, the vigil during the COVID lockdown. I recognise, but nevertheless, they were incredibly brutal with women who had to honour Sarah Everard's death. And, you know, this has come to light again because of all of that evidence we heard in the sentencing. About precisely the extent to which he abused his powers. And I think, I think for lots of women, there has been that really horrifying recognition that in that circumstance, we would have got in that car too. And the moment you have got in that car, you're dead. And that is just a devastating reality about the power that police have over us. Personally, I agree that Cressida Dick should have gone, but she's not going to go. So the way for her to have some hope of redeeming herself, I think, in the eyes of those who have lost confidence in her, is to absolutely open the doors, open the books, let the light in, and use those 2 years to be a radically reforming commissioner. I really hope she's got it in her.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've all asked ourselves as women, isn't it? What would we have done faced with a police officer telling us we had breached COVID regulations, and most of us would have got in that car too. Let's turn to the Telegraph now, Christopher, and a push to scrap free COVID tests. Concerns about the cost to the public purse of free lateral flow tests and PCR tests, mass testing.
This is all about a return to normal, living with COVID. The idea mooted in this story in the Telegraph is that under a new system, the free tests might be only provided in high-risk settings like care homes, hospitals and schools, as well as for people with symptoms. And rather than having them given out, we have them at home here for the children, and there's these lateral flow tests are everywhere now, aren't they? But the cost of this to the taxpayer is enormous. And we are growing to live with COVID. And in the same way, I think there's a big risk going into this winter with flu. I think this makes some degree of sense that we have to try and find a way, most of us now are vaccinated, and let's start living with this dreadful disease.
Does it make sense as we head into the autumn and winter, Polly, to withdraw free tests from the public? Aren't tests part of the government's strategy?
Tests are a big part of the government's strategy. Chris is right. At some point, we have to get rid of this. We will need to move to that point where we are living with this disease. Jeremy Farrow of the Wellcome Trust has suggested, who serves on SAGE, that that's perhaps 30,000 cases, 100 deaths that we're talking about as a level that we might have to live with, and it's uncomfortable to accept that. The question only for me is when precisely. And we had that predicted summer wave that didn't come, thank goodness. There's the possibility of a winter wave and that having implications. I think for me, the key thing is that incentives, though, still aren't right for people to take the test and stay at home if they are infectious, because we still have some of the lowest sick pay in the Western developed world. And that means that if you feel a bit of a cough and cold, it's in your interest, if you don't get sick pay or if you're self-employed, to just sort of hope, maybe wear a mask and go out there. And I think if you're going to invest money in public health interventions, personally, I would focus on concentrating these tests in those more high-risk settings and getting the incentives right for people and improving our sick pay.
And we're seeing now a big push on the flu vaccine, encouraging people to have their flu vaccine, because that could put increasing pressure on the NHS this autumn and winter. Stay with us, Christopher and Polly. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, could the rising cost of living be about to get even worse? We'll be discussing that after the break. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Polly Mackenzie and Christopher Hope. Christopher, we're going to turn to inside the Times now. A warning by factory bosses of closures with soaring gas prices.
Yes, you've got bosses here of steel, ceramics, chemicals and paper businesses meeting with Kwasi Kwarteng today, the business secretary, warning that closures could happen soon. The reason why is the significant increases in bills. Unlike you and I at home, these big wholesale manufacturers, that they can't benefit from the cap on costs of gas. So the price of wholesale gas is soaring by 250% since the start of the year. They are in an energy crisis. This will have a knock-on effect for these key raw material areas, which we may find coming through towards consumers. I'm not sure how soon that will take, but that's the worry. I mean, the worry is that factories start being closed because they can't afford to keep them open. In the old days, it was many brick makers. This is a much bigger scale problem. Brick makers are the first ones because the amount of energy they used was really was so much really, and there was quite a marginal business for many of them. But to see the scale of industry warning of closures, it shows what a serious state we're in.
And the PM's recruited the former boss of Tesco to try and sort out supply chain issues, Polly.
Yes, described as here to save Christmas in the light of potential shortages. It's a reminder, I think, all of these stories, how complicated supply chains are and how much everything is connected. We had a few weeks ago, we had that gas prices led to a carbon dioxide shortage, which led to a chicken shortage. And the government had to step in to essentially subsidize the costs of the production of that carbon dioxide. It's now gas prices are continuing to rise. There's no real let up in sight. Russia a pipeline, using prices as a bargaining chip around a pipeline that they want to build to bypass Ukraine. So there's no magic way to bring gas prices down. And of course, shortages in consumer goods, shortages in business goods, all drive inflation even further. We knew that there would be a burst of inflation as the global economy came back to life. But most of the chief economists of banks around the world said they thought it would be temporary. The fear is, particularly because we've added all of this friction to our trade borders because of Brexit, that we and labour shortages, that we end up with inflation that we can't control.
And let's just have a quick look at the Star. They describe it as crunch time. We've survived fuel pigs, CO2 and lorry crises, but how will we cope with this new hell? Saying that crisps are now facing price hikes. But I want to, before we run out of time, Christopher, to the FT. Brussels offering to ease tensions with plans for fewer controls across the Irish Sea. This is about the so-called sausage wars.
Yeah, and it's not just sausages, it's other food products too that can't go currently between, or won't shortly when this grace period ends, between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. This shows to me that this hardball that the government's playing, that we're expecting some big moment in early November when Lord Frost, the Brexit minister, may even rip up this protocol and impose our own protocol, like trigger Article 16. This shows, I think, that Brussels is getting nervous. The final denouement of the Brexit saga, I think, is within weeks away now, and I think this shows that over in Brussels they're worried about it, and then they're offering new ways to stop doing so many checks on things going across the Irish Sea. The UK claims that that's caused all the problems, or a lot of the problems in Northern Ireland. That's disputed by the European Union, but this is where it is. It's numbers and volumes of checks between the two islands of GB and Northern and Ireland.
Very quick thought from you. Is this a victory for Lord Frost and his negotiations, Polly?
I mean, you know, the bombast and the bluster and they're in the end backing down is basically Lord Frost's negotiating techniques. This is good progress. Basically, sausages and other traditional British products will have to have a big old Union Jack on them marked UK only and not be permitted to cross the border. You know, it sounds like the beginnings of a good solution that will allow more Northern Irish people to have more sausages. Good.
OK.